Welcome to you all. Thanks for joining us for one of our last sessions, I think, next this week. We are glad to have you here. Let's see if I can get the a little closer. There we go. Okay, that'll do. All right. Well, my name is Goshen. I work at Google Cloud, and I lead the partner marketing team that works with generative AI partners. And so glad to be here today with our distinguished guests from Box, from Glean, from Workday, folks that are all great Google Cloud customers and partners, part of our generative AI ecosystem, open ecosystem, providing great solutions, great innovation, choice to all of our mutual customers. So the topic today is all around the enterprise and generative AI for enterprise use cases, enterprise customers, how we're going to maximize it and roll it into our environments. So we'll have a set, after intros, we'll have a set of prepared questions here for the panel, and we'll try to save some time for live Q&A from the group as well. But let's go ahead and start, and we'll start with you, Ketan, from Box, and have you all introduce yourselves and your companies and what you do.
Absolutely, thank you. My name is Ketan Kittur. I'm VP of Platform and Integrations at Box. At Box, some of you may know, we develop enterprise software for secure content management in the cloud and collaboration. And my role specifically at Box is I lead our developer platform, APIs, developer relations, and partner integrations team. And I'm really looking forward to the discussion. So,
cool. Hi, everyone. I'm Eddie. I lead our AI team at Glean. At Glean, we're trying to build and bring workplace search and assistant to everyone who works on a computer. So our customers range from startups like us all the way up into large Fortune 500 enterprise companies. My team at Glean specifically on the engineering side works on making our product intelligent. So obviously the topic here today is near and dear to heart. And before Glean, I was actually at Google, and I was on the brain team, so it's nice to be sort of back here in the fold talking to some ex-colleagues, ex-cloud colleagues.
Great. Good morning, everyone. My name's Josh Lannin. I'm a vice president with Workday. We're a leading provider of HCM and financials in the cloud. Essentially, we allow companies to manage their most important assets, their people and their money. We've got 8,000 plus developers at Workday, and my team builds internal platform technology, allowing them to make the most around documents, content, and messaging as part of the Workday experiences. And we've been working on Gen AI enablement across our products for the last 6-7 months or so.
Great, thanks, welcome to you all. So, but before we kick off with our first question, I thought maybe we would take a couple minutes to hear from the audience and just check by a show of hands, how many of you here with us are already using generative AI tools in your work environment today, by show of hands? Okay, all right. Good number, I'd say. Well, then let's start with everyone here, and let us know for each of you how your companies are leveraging generative AI today, and how is Google Cloud factoring into that?
Yeah, so at Box, there are 2 or 3 areas where we are using Gen AI. The first one is developer productivity, and essentially looking at how Gen AI helps us, the developers become more efficient. So for example, we're experimenting with code assistants. We are looking into how Gen AI can help us with API documentation, generate documentation, and also absorb it, make it easier for our developers to absorb it. We are experimenting with test scripts. We see a lot of potential there to sort of improve our test coverage as well as the right test cases and so on. So there's a big sort of area there around developer productivity where we see a lot of potential, and we are sort of working our way through that. The second one is we announced Box AI. Essentially, it's a set of capabilities leveraging advanced AI models embedded in our Box product portfolio. And this is where we also partnered with Google, where we are including advanced Google AI models, essentially to classify extract metadata and ensure that we help employees collaborate and interact with content in a much more effective way. And the third one actually is quite interesting. It's eat your own dog food, as they say, is we're also looking into how AI can help improve our own business processes, right? So for example, sales operations is an area where we have tons of meetings. Not everyone attends the meetings, but they want to sort of get content from those meetings. So with transcription services, image recognition and so on, with metadata tags, we sort of have now created a workflow where employees can go and they can check meetings they didn't attend and quickly sort of go to the point where they, which is content that's relevant for them and sort of take it from there. So various different ways in which we are working with Gen AI.
Great. Thanks, Ketan. Yeah, go ahead, Josh. I'm sorry.
It's okay. I think just building off of what Ketan said, productivity is sort of the clear, obvious place where we feel like over the past 9 months to a year, we've been thinking about how generative AI fits into Glean's core product and sort of using that internally and figuring out where those use cases are. So that core productivity, whether it's answering questions more clearly, simply, more quickly, unlocks time savings, right? But I think the sort of larger upside is the sort of new capabilities that come with this technology. So rather than sort of simple question answering, leveraging the sort of lightweight reasoning capabilities of these models, pairing them with knowledge stores, retrieval engines that we've been working on for several years to actually enable sort of complex flows, right? Rather than issuing something simple, trying to solve a sort of simple employee task, helping users sort of express more complex things that might require going to multiple pieces of information, talking to multiple people, and pulling them all together. Being able to express that sort of higher level intent or higher level question is something that we see the recent generative AI capabilities enabling. So that's what we've been trying to push into our core Glean product and using it every day in the company.
Now, Josh.
Yeah, building on that, it's very similar for us. On the first side of the coin, it's the products that we build, and we've spent a number of years working with Google foundational machine learning models to enhance our product experiences. And this year, it's about really looking for that slightly more transformative capability that comes with Gen AI, using the Vertex APIs. We've started to experiment with fine-tuning in order to be able to deliver more differentiated experiences. So we were very proud at the keynote at the start of this conference to announce that we've started to build out some capabilities for consumers of Workday to do things like generate job descriptions using generative AI and really save them enormous amounts of time and energy. And that's just the first of many things we're doing on the product side. And then secondly, internally, it's just an amazing set of tools. It's both engineering teams that are getting code assistance, as well as sort of looking at, well, how do we transform the lives of product managers who need to synthesize product research or write requirements, or how do we enable designers to kind of quickly take advantage of all these image generation capabilities and quickly modeling and designing out the experiences. So it feels like it's a great technology because it touches so many different disciplines in the enterprise, and that's something that we don't always see, and I think is very, very powerful.
Great. So one of the things that's come up a lot in conversations with customers all week is where to get started. Everybody gets it, right? It's a great opportunity. Use cases are just exploding, but where do I start? How do I start? So, question for each of you is, what are you all doing in your teams to bring customers along, and what are you seeing in this early customer adoption? Go ahead, starting with you, Ketan.
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, so Box, we deal with content cloud management and collaboration, and in enterprises, IDC just released a report saying 90% of enterprise data is over 90% is unstructured, which means it's scattered all over the place, different apps and so on. And our software essentially helps customers sort of make sense of it, collaborate, share that data, and improve productivity. With generative AI, we can take that to the next level. And we've sort of seen three main trends. and focus areas that we are sort of working on. The first one is business insights. So how might we help customers out of all this data that's scattered, call out specific insights, ask questions, summarize documents, sort of figure out workflows and so on. So that's one big area around insights. The second one is around create content generating using Gen AI. And this is to do with, you can feed it meeting agendas, for example, or emails and sort of create drafts, and essentially, so it's a mixture that goes across multiple functions. To your point, whether it's in product, sales, marketing, creating content using Gen AI is a pretty big thing that we are seeing, and we are sort of working on that. We announced, in fact, a product on that, which is our Notes product, where you can create content using that as well. And then the third one is automating business processes. And this is essentially creating templates, classifying data, classifying documents, extracting metadata, and so on. And so this is also an area where developers can leverage APIs and sort of extend and create sort of workflows that they could not previously. And so our discussions with customers are on these 3 points, and we are sort of focusing our product efforts on this as well, and we announced a couple areas here as well.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say these sort of use cases or new product experiences that can be enabled are generally coming into focus, but there's sort of an underlying set of concerns that we hear from customers. Two big ones. One, like, where is my data? Is it safe? With these generative AI models going outside of this environment, what can we do with that? And that's a big picture of where us working with GCP and with Google has made that story a lot clearer. Being able to serve our generative AI, our inference requests against Palm within GCP sort of continues the natural security story that we've been building. And so that's a huge, huge boon to us. The second part of the data safety is, are these LLMs training on my data, right? And again, these are the concerns that underlie all the optimism of what can be done. And so we've had to sort of really educate our customers, work with them to help them understand the nuances of how such a system might be built, right? Fine-tuning, training LLMs is really powerful, but it's also very scary, right? You sort of, in the enterprise, you have permissions for information, you have access control, and it's still an open research question how that might factor into the training of these models, right? And so we've designed at Glean sort of a very careful way to pair permission-safe sort of core search AI with generative AI, and that's what's enabled us to sort of help these customers feel comfortable. As we talk to customers with hundreds of thousands of employees, hundreds of billions of dollars of revenue, they feel comfortable enough to understand that those two concerns are sort of met and can sort of harvest the upside those use cases that Ketan was talking about.
Huge. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, I think one thing that we have in common is that we do serve the needs of a variety of companies, including the world's largest organizations. And so those concerns around data compliance, governance, scalability are very much there. People talk about generative AI as being one of the biggest transformations that we're going to see in our lifetimes around technology. I believe that's true, rivaling the cloud, mobile, possibly even in the internet. And I think what's interesting about this inflection point is that the technology is so accessible. So even when I'm talking to our largest enterprises, companies that might classically be thought of as slow moving, they're moving very rapidly in this space. So there's a ton of experimentation going on. And at the same time, with the largest enterprises, there's a lot of thought going into what does good governance look like? How do we put in place the right kind of guardrails? How do we embrace the right kind of policies so that we can do this in a safe way that all of our customers collectively need to see to move forward?
Good. Any other comments about data safety? This is a big topic. Yeah.
Just to build on that, I think one big thread that I see talking to customers is there is concerns around, questions sometimes, concerns around how is my data being used? Also security and privacy, right? And so one of the things, for example, we did was, it was constant, right? And it's a pretty valid concern. It's a new trend, like you say, is we published Box AI principles. And essentially the goal here is to be transparent, but focus on three main points. The first one is the customer controls the data, right? So they control whether they want their data to be AI capable or not within our product, right? They have the ability who is going to use our AI capabilities or not. So they having the full control is one big principle. The second one is around security and privacy, which is, can my data be used for training in AI or not?
Yeah.
And give them that entire sort of flexibility and power essentially to do that. And we have built controls within our product to enable that as well. And then the third one is full transparency, right? Like if you're using AI capabilities within the product, so how are we using it? What algorithms are you using it? What does data usage look like? Make these logs available, for example, to the admins so they can sort of look at who's using it and so on and so forth. So just being open and transparent has been a big sort of unlock for us to get the discussion started to then, okay, makes sense now. What do those use cases look like and what the roadmap looks like, which I'm sure we'll talk about too.
Yeah, yeah. And from the Google side, we've been hearing all week, we use the expression over and over, your data is your data. I think we're all kind of locked arms on this, where we're committed to zero data leakage throughout. I mean, if any of your data, your input data, your metadata model output, your human feedback is completely safe. If you fine tune, train anything of your Vertex model, your data is not used to feed other models. Your data is not used for other customers. Your data is not used for the internet. Your data is not used for other Google services. Your data is your data, and it's safe, and it's kept in your domain under your control. So I think that's where our partners are at as well on this topic.
Yeah, I mean, I think because we started with like popularity starting with the consumer side, it just sort of set everyone in this place of like, oh, my data is showing up back in these models, and like, but really we've all been working with Google for a long time on ML and having that notion that we're just processing customers' information on their behalf. It's your data.
Yeah.
And so it's sort of resetting with everyone's expectations. Like we can do that with generative AI, and I think it's sort of intrinsic to how we work.
Absolutely. All right, so I want to move on to some another kind of interesting conversation top of mind around the quality of what we get out of generative AI. And I thought again to turn to the audience and see where folks are yourselves in terms of how you're feeling about what is the quality of what we're getting from generative AI insights today with today's tools. So if we artificially create like a 3-point scale, where 1 is kind of low confidence in the quality of the data, 2 is in the middle, and 3 is pretty confident that the quality of the output is pretty sound. By show of hands, how many folks would be kind of in the 1 category where you're not so confident about the quality of generative AI insights today? Who'd be in the middle, like number 2 in the middle? And then is there any 3s that are like really confident? No, it's good, I'm good. Okay. A little bit of a map. So for the team here, so what strategies can organizations adopt to ensure that the employees, people are using the data, using the tools, actually have the confidence that what's being generated is believable and is usable? And maybe we'll start with Eddie on this one.
Yeah. I think we have to be really thoughtful. When we put products and experiences in front of people that are powered by generative AI, we have to really understand how they're going to interpret that, right? And from our experiences at Glean developing these kinds of products, we found that sort of when you inform a user sort of what the capabilities are, what context is there that this system is using to say answer your questions, that's a really critical part of the experience, right? If you're trying to build an assistant and a search engine that answers questions about anything in the company, you better be certain that it's connected to everything, right? When users come to that experience, they have a mental model of their company's knowledge, and if your system doesn't match or indeed exceed it, then you're going to be in trouble, right? They're going to expect a certain level of quality that simply won't be satisfiable, right? So sort of that expectation and understanding that any such system needs to have the right context to answer all these questions or to sort of inform that product experience is important. And I think the second part of that is, aside from sort of the sort of aggregation and the sort of collection of what data is there, you need sort of referenceability, right? And I don't want to get too technical, but when we talk about where these answers are coming from or what's actually happening under the hood, we need to understand the sort of source, right? The sort of source, whether it's source documents that are informing the generated response, source information, and without that, there can be no confidence built by the user, right? You'll lose trust. You might just go ask another employee, another coworker right away, like, is this actually right? If you can't have a sort of clear line to point a link back to where things are. So we think that sort of referenceability is also a really important part of, as we continue to learn and build these generative AI experiences, core to understanding that.
Yeah, Josh.
Yeah, to build on that, I mean, I love thinking about the user experience around generative AI, and we have a principle about keeping the human in the loop for that experience, right? So it's really good to just think about, like, how do you actually make that happen? Because, like, we've all had the experience going online, getting a term of service and scroll, next, right? Who takes the time to read that? But with generative AI content, we really want people to be a little bit more thoughtful. If we're giving someone a blank sheet of paper and saying, we can now generate a job description for you using some data, and that comes back and they hit done without reviewing it, that's not what we want to see happen, because it might not be really the right content for that role. And so we do things to sort of bring first-time experience to new users, explaining what it is that they're seeing when they work with generative experience for the first time. One of the things that we got in that first experience is, during the few seconds it takes to generate that job description, for example, we actually show what data we're pushing into the LLM to the end user. We're saying, hey, it's location data, it's skills data, this is the input. To kind of that, like, reference point. So we're kind of getting a lot of feedback about how to build confidence with users through just being more transparent and really kind of bringing to light in the product experience itself what it is that we're doing behind the scenes in a way that they can understand.
Yeah, and I think there's this sort of tension between, you want to harvest those productivity gains. You want this to actually be a great first draft. You don't want to rubber stamp it and have it go anywhere, but if it just requires someone to sort of read through the whole thing very thoroughly again, then you've sort of lost the gains you could have had, right? And so another strong way to build this confidence is simply to make the system better, right? To create a system that's wrong less, that requires less time to review, and we have to do that carefully, right? Because users, as you said, when they're in that product experience, might not understand where we are today, but we ultimately have to drive towards a place where they have that confidence and the system is actually doing the right thing, right? And it requires less and less sort of intervention, less and less sort of human judgment.
I mean, that takes measurement, right?
Yep.
I mean, we can look at the end result, who got hired or didn't out of these outcomes. How do we then infer, were we doing a good job with what we were creating? So we like to measure everything in our industry. We don't always succeed at doing that. I think this is an area where it's just so important, as you're thinking about building these systems, to build in the metrics and analysis so that you can understand the outcomes.
Yeah, and if I can add a couple lenses on this. So one is, there are areas in product, for example, where accuracy is absolutely important. So for example, if you're in the security space and you're using AI to sort of improve the accuracy of your threat models, you cannot say, yeah, it's okay, we'll let a couple percentage slide by. So you got to ensure that training is there. Diversity is important. So to your point around human in the loop, you got to make sure that diverse viewpoints and the results and all that are taken care of, so that your accuracy is very, very high, to the level you want. Then there are areas in product, for example, where you're using AI, not necessarily for accuracy, though it is important, but to improve productivity, to sort of infuse creativity in the product. So for example, you can have a product experience where you're saying, hey, help me get started, writer's block, or you're in the marketing thing, you want to get some drafts going, whatever. So what AI is doing there is help you get started. And so to your point on the product side, it's important from a product standpoint to start making sure that your product evolves and catches up to AI, to make sure you set the right expectations for your users. So if you're giving them a summary of a document, and you're not 100% sure, make sure that you cite sources, right? Make sure that you can give them prompts to go find out more on their own, and so on and so forth. So I think there are different ways in which this can be implemented, and results will vary, but it'll still be useful as well.
Nice.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, we just this week, Google, we're responsible AI is a critical component of for the cloud team ourselves. And Tuesday morning in the keynote, Sundar announced this new concept that we have, the only cloud provider that has digital watermarking for images that come out of one of our models. So it's basically images are watermarked, can't see it visually, you can't see it, it's not perceptible from the human eye, but tools are able to ferret it out. So one of these early stage tools, again, only from Google Cloud, but an early stage tool to help to try to build the confidence of users that there's underlying reliability, security and integrity in the source data. So good, thank you. All right, so let's move on to employees, and employees are everybody's daily workload and jobs, and we all know that there are tasks that can be game-changing with the influx of generative AI. So in what ways can generative AI lighten the workloads of employees in the workplace? And then how do we measure? We talked about measurement a couple of minutes ago, but how do we start to measure the success, the return on what this is offering to ourselves and our teams? So maybe Josh, we'll start with you this round.
Yeah, thank you. We hear this too, and I think we all feel it. People are overloaded with work. And an interesting fact, there are 3 million people less in the US workforce than there were before the pandemic. And that trend is not going away. And so when we talk to people about what they want most from all this technology, it's time back in their day, the ability to eliminate mundane tasks and really get to the higher value. For us, it's pretty straightforward, operating at some scale to sort of talk to customers and realize where they're spending a lot of time, and not to keep harping on the same use case, but I love it a lot. When we're generating job descriptions, we know that it takes on an average an hour or two for our customers to write one. And we do 30 million of those a year on behalf of our customers. So it's a very clear ROI for us to deliver that capability. Nice. And I think it just comes down to talking to your customers, identifying the pain points, finding out those just core metrics around time spent on task, and then looking at how do you enable technology to get that time back.
Yeah. How about you, Ketan, for the Box team? What are your thoughts, employee productivity and measuring it?
So I'll say off the bat that we are early stages, so we are learning. But I would say there are 2 or 3 areas, and the ROI can be different for those areas. So for example, like I said earlier, if we are using AI in the developer productivity side, where we are essentially using code assistants, we're using it to generate test cases or API docs and so on, you'll measure returns based on developer productivity, and there are very specific sort of productivity metrics each organization has around those. So I think that's one area in which you may want to sort of go down on, and it's very specific to that domain though. Then there are others where we actually make collaboration software, content management software, right? In which case, the objective, if you infuse that with AI, is to make sure that we give employees time back, or we reduce redundancy in their workforce, effectively improving their efficiency, right? And so the way you would measure it is through time and so on, but there are so many other ways you can do it too. Then there is business processes where you're creating new workflows, let's say, right? Like an example of mine, which I like is, let's say you're in the financial domain, and a big part of the approval workflow is that, customers upload documents, tons of documents, right? Then there is a manual review process of the documents. Then you make decisions around some parameters or some rubric that you have, and then you come back to the customer. With AI, what can happen is, as you start loading those documents, you can start extracting metadata. You can start creating these workflows that automate a lot of this process so that these decisions are, in some cases, automated, some cases expedited, right? And so that's an area as well. If you're in a sales organization or customer service, for example, you can use AI to essentially go through all these insights very, very quickly, which would have taken you a lot of time. So in this case, you would measure it with time save, but also the quality of the response that you get would be phenomenal, right? So I think there are different ways in which AI can be measured and will add value to organizations going forward.
Great. Eddie, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's measuring productivity and the gains is not new to us at Glean. We've been building search for 4 years now, and we already had to sort of tell that story. We knew 30% of time spent by knowledge workers is time spent on finding information, right? We knew that was something that we could go after and measure, right? But now with generative AI, you can sort of think about, okay, one, yes, you have the time savings. We can talk to our customers, find out that each employee saves 2 to 3 hours per week with our product. But two, you also can sort of look at vertical use cases, right? We have a Fortune 500 telecom provider, and they've deployed Glean in their call centers, right? And you see calls, sort of support calls going from minutes to seconds, right? You can actually measure the sort of efficiency gains there, right? You have sort of cases where customers are, say rolling their own internal solution to solve this problem. They have a sort of employee spend and time spent on that, and so they are able to save $3 million a year annually by sort of leveraging Glean instead of doing this build solution, right? But there's also something qualitative here. There's something about figuring out how employees are feeling, what the kind of work that they don't like doing that's confronting them every single day.
Let's talk about that.
Things that are sort of, that products have the opportunity to help with, right? That help onboarding to make people feel less lost, that help sort of, like Josh was saying, the sort of rote work or the stuff that people don't want to do. It increases retention, it sort of increases fulfillment, it leaves room for sort of deeper work. So that's something that we also sort of talk to our customers and our users about to get a pulse check on how can we measure the value that this is providing.
Yeah, great. Any other thoughts?
No, I love the point you made. I think just making sure that,
to allow ourselves to think and consider that one. Not as easily measured, but real. Yeah. Thanks for coming out. Thank you. Thanks for joining us. Thanks to the panel. Great discussion. Really appreciate it.